Hello. This talk is going to be in English. Is everyone okay with that? Okay, good. My name is José. In France, you would say je sais. In Spanish, je sais means I know. So I always have problem with that. It's like, je sais, yes, I know as well. I'm going to talk about faster application development with CakePHP 3.0. Who is familiar with CakePHP already here in this room? Okay, quite a few people. That's nice. And I know that here in France, I'm kind of in enemy territory. I'm okay with that. Whoop. I probably should connect this to a power source. Do we have one? Yes. So while I find a power source, oh, I don't have it here. Yeah. Has anyone tried already Cake 3? One person in the back. That person is cheating because he was at CakeFest 2 months ago, where we presented the first version, or the first beta release. Okay, so good. Let's get started. So our agenda for today is I'm going to tell you a very short story. I'm going to talk to you about Grampus. Grampus are cool. I hope you like them. I'm going to do a very short overview of CakePHP 3. And I'm going to talk about this raison pour dire wow. Hopefully, maybe not. And well, after that, just let's get baking. So a short story. You probably know that CakePHP has been around for a long, long time, isn't it? We started back in 2004. It's not shown in the graph because one guy decided to delete every single file in our subversion repository in 2005. That was not a fun day, so all the history was lost. So we have more than 1,000 commits that are not there anymore. And well, you can see how the project has been growing over time. That is the commit per day history, or per month, probably per month, yeah. So you can see that there's been a real trend of growth on CakePHP. So for those who think that CakePHP is something that was left in the past and is not evolving and is dead, bad news. Well, and in 2004, you probably were wearing diapers, wasn't that? And as you were wearing diapers, you were probably your grandpa's favorite. So let's have a short talk about Grampus. And this is because CakePHP can be considered a grandparent of frameworks, right? Maybe you do not know that, but CakePHP was the first PHP framework, along with another one that was called Agave, if you probably remember. So let's talk about Grampus. And the first type of Grandpa is a dormant Grandpa. All cool kids make fun of him. I'm going to talk about Grampus, and well, this may or may not apply to CakePHP, and may or may not apply to your favorite framework. So we could imagine CakePHP in a dormant way, and all the other cool kids are like, haha, you don't have that feature. Well, that could be true. We also have the bad influence dad, or grandpa. And it's like all the cool kids want to be like him, or we could say all the other frameworks want to be like him, but that doesn't often end up very well, does it? And finally, we have the third type of grandpa, which I kind of relate more to, or I could say this is my vision of what CakePHP is, and it's the magic one. Right? So to all the new frameworks, we say, you shall not pass. And well, it's because CakePHP now is so mature, is so old, has so much experience, that we have refined and refined and refined the feature set that we as developers eating our own dog food want to use and need to use. And those that we don't like anymore, those that we know that are problematic, those that have shown little value for the community itself, we just trim them. So why CakePHP 3? Well, first reason is because it's very mature. It's been there for a long time. There's a lot of experience. There's a lot of new features that you will like and love. Second reason is the new ORM is extremely powerful, extremely flexible, and it's very lightweight. We went another direction from what the rest of the world is doing, which is trying to make your relational database into objects that is valid, that has its use cases. But I'm personally in love with SQL. I love SQL. I think it's so powerful, and it lets you do so much complex things in such a small amount of code that I wanted to say, okay, let's go back to that idea and see how we can improve over that. And we're going to talk a bit more about it later. It's still ahead in the PHP world when it comes to generating forms, validating forms, and creating interfaces in a rapid way. You probably, if you have used CakePHP, know that already. And now we have switched to a middleware stack or mentality. So you can now compose your actions or your code by having multiple classes running on top of each other, adding value to a request. It's not here, but another reason where I see CakePHP 3 succeeding is when you have a company where not everyone wants to follow the rules. So you need a framework that actually enforces that. CakePHP does not enforce, but actually suggests. So with these suggestions that it does, it actually removes the amount of decisions that a developer needs to make beforehand. So when you want to start a project, you need to do 100,000 different decisions. CakePHP already made a big part of those. Once you develop your application and you're comfortable with your feature set, you can go back and refactor and say, well, those decisions that CakePHP took for me, I can now say otherwise. So CakePHP solves 80% of the problem and then stays out of the way. Another reason to use Cake now is that now you can use it separately. It has better interconnection with the rest of the PHP ecosystem, and you can pick some of the components, we could say, out of Cake to use it in your projects. For example, the cache component, or event, or validation, or my favorite, collection. If you have ever used _JS, have you? Yes? Well, _JS is a JavaScript library that grabs the idea, or basically grabs collections, or things that you can iterate on, and adds a vast array of, a battery of methods to operate on those iterable collections. So this is an example where I get 3 elements, and I want to want to insert inside another property of the first array another array. Oh, sorry, this is not the example. Oops. In this example, I want to combine, I want to have a short list that is parent, ID, and then the name. And then I can do that with a single line. Sorry for the mix-up. Is that clear? Thank you. So let's jump to the ORM. This probably looks very alien to you if you have used Cake 2 or 1 before, but maybe not as alien if you have used another framework. It actually looks like SQL. I told you I like SQL, so I did not want to hinder any of the features of the structured query language. So what we have here is that you can find, select, where, having, group, inner join, left join, right join, etc. And everything is an expression. So anything the ORM returns is an expression that you can compose inside another method. So for example, you have a function that returns a function object. You can put that in a select, you can put that in a where, you can put that in a order by, etc., etc. In this example, we're using a query as a part of an inner join or using a query as a part of a filtering in where. Another cool thing is that queries can be composed, or that means finders can be composed. That means if you have one or more finders in your tables, you can, for example, say, well, find active, and on top of find active, find the premium. And one important thing to know at that point is that no queries have been done so far. It's just constructing a query until you want to execute it. So for example, in this case, when you do each, it will actually execute the query and fetch one by one the users. And in the second example, on the one in the bottom, I have two query objects. And the cool thing about queries is that they extend collection or have all the collection methods. So they have really, really powerful collection methods. For example, in this case, you can append two queries together and iterate it as if it were one thing. It's like doing a union, if you have ever used union in SQL. Have you? OK. Please stop me if you're not following. And this one is one of my favorites. It's a requirement from a client. Please give me the cities of the world which have a population that is bigger than Denmark. I live in Denmark. It's a very small country. There's a lot of cities in the world with a population bigger than Denmark. And this is a case where I can find it. I first use a query to get the population of Denmark. And then using the association system, I say, well, find me the, in this case, in the table that I am, is countries. So countries has many cities. So find matching cities, all countries matching cities, where their population is more than that query. Remember that find returns a query, does not return results now. So what I'm doing there is using a subquery for a finder. Is that clear? Great. Another thing is that you can lazy post-process results in a query. So you have this finder called finding continent groups, and the only thing that it does is adding a processor to the pipe. So queries will contain post-processing methods at the end. If you don't execute the query, if you don't iterate, nothing will happen. But if you do, then there will be a format result process that, in this case, what it's going to do is going to group all the results by the continent property. And this will be the result. So you can see that the new philosophy of the ORM is everything should be possible with really, really, really few lines. And as I told you, this lazy processing are going into a pipeline. So you can append and append and append result formatters over and over until you get the result you want. In this case, I first group by continent, and then for each of the results inside that collection, I group by the region. And the result is, well, I have North America, Caribbean, and then the country name. Make sense? Great. And we have plenty more, but I don't want to bother you. It's a very big framework. We have so many features. I have so little time. One of the coolest features I have posted here, I love the new MapReduce feature of the ORM. It has intelligent counts, where if you tell a query to perform a count, it could do it or not do it. For example, you could cache upfront the result of that count operation. You can use pagination in just basically one line. It's really, really easy to save associations in just one operation. It allows query caching. It has callbacks for filtering. And one of the other cool features is that unlike other ORMs, where that is very hard to do, it supports composite primary keys, which was something it was impossible in Cake before. There's a lot to cover. I already did most of the examples that I put here. They are on that repository. I encourage you to go there and take a look. There are plenty of examples. They run, so you can see what they do, and it includes a sample SQL file, so you see what the data is. So let's get baking. You ready? Yay. I hope any of those features actually made you say, wow. No? OK, so install CakePHP. Now it's done with Composer. I came from Jordi's talk. He is one of the creators of Composer. Good talk. It's very easy. Just call Composer create project. We have an app template, and then spin up a local server. It's basically Cake server, and that's it. And you will get a welcome page. It looks like this. OK? I have the code here, by the way. And let me see if I have it here. Yeah. Well, it's not the biggest screen, but now you can see that the new structure is a bit different. We have bin, config, logs, plugin, source, test. And inside source, now you will find yourself more familiar if you use Cake before. You have the console, controller, model, template, and view. OK? So basically, we just extracted some of the folders out for security and just readability. And whatever is the core of your application lives inside source. So, well, let's create a new database. The example that we're going to build today is a bookmark application. A delicious kind of clone. You have URLs, and you can tag URLs, and you have users creating those bookmarks. And only a user can see their own bookmarks. So as you can see now, Cake offers a migrations tool. It's offered by Things. Have you ever used Things before? Things is a framework agnostic migrations tool. It's very, very complete. So that's why we chose it. You can actually use it in any project. You don't have to wait for Cake 3. Just go to that web page, download the thing, and start using migrations. So basically, you just create a class and call then the migrate function. The file looks like this. One cool thing is that they are reversible. You have a change method, so if you migrate up, it will create the tables. If you migrate down or roll back, it will remove the tables. But you only have to write the code once, which is the code for creating. If you alter a column, if you drop a column, stuff like that, it will also roll back. The data will be lost, of course, but the structure will be maintained. So it's very simple. We have users, bookmarks, tags, and the join table for the bookmark tags. Any questions so far? No. And then we bake all, which is a concept from CakePHP that you probably know. We try to generate most of the code. This is like a TV show where I'm the chef. And you know, in those shows that they start, and you put the eggs, yeah, and then they grab a box from somewhere else, and it's done. Well, I'm going to do exactly the same. Now I have baked all. And as you can see here, I have new files. I have bookmarks controller, tags controller, users controller. And in the model folder, you can see now it's different. Models are not a single file anymore. Now they're separated in two different concepts, which is the table, representing the table, and the entity representing the row. And when you bake, you already have the declarations of the associations and other stuff like the display field, which is the primary key. If you have the created and modified column, it detects that, so it adds the timestamp behavior. In this case, a bookmark belongs to users and belongs to many tags. It also creates validation. Now it's a method and not a property because you can have different validation sets. So for example, for an action A, you want to use this type of validation. For action B, you want to use a completely different type of validation. In this case, the default is that nothing can be empty. And the same happens for users. Controllers, if you have used Cake before, they will be still very familiar. You have all the actions: index, view, add, edit, delete. And these actions are basically very, very straightforward to read. Index is just paginate the bookmarks. View is get the bookmarks by ID and then set it to the view. Add is post, save the thing, and so on. Okay? So how it looks, I go to, for example, users, actually bookmarks. Bookmarks. And I have my table of bookmarks. I already had data there. I can view. Sorry, this is not a version where it works. It still has some problems that we need to fix. But I can go to users, and we see that the problem is that the password is too long for the table, for this view. And tags. You can view. No, same problem. You can edit. You can delete, etc. So it's very straightforward. It's just a CRUD, like very, very simple CRUD of all your tables. Now let's make it a bit better. If it weren't for that particular error that I had before, sorry for mix, we could say, that's it, the end. End of your talk. Questions? Well, we still have some work to do, but you can see how far CakeBake can take you. If you define your table correctly, if you follow some conventions that are easy to follow, it can take you very, very far, and you can impress a lot of people with that. Let's talk a bit before fixing some errors about debug. Have you used debug debefore? Okay, only one? I'm disappointed at you, especially at you. Thank you. Debug is a tool. Let me see if I can. It's this way. Debug is this tool here where you can see everything related to your cache information, your environment, history, includes log, request, session, SQL log for each request. And the history is basically all the requests that you have made. Well, you have it there. You can see a historic, and all the information here will change accordingly. So it's really, really useful for debugging. But OK, don't you think that the code in the controllers is super repetitive? Isn't it? I do think so. So how do we fix that? How do we remove all that code that is repetitive and create also a web plus a REST interface? And how do we do that without losing readability? Well, we do that with the CRUD plugin. So the CRUD plugin is basically installing that package, adding that code that you see there to the app controller, and remove everything, everything from your controllers. Piece of cake. So let's take a look at that. Oops, did I close it? Apparently, yes. 1 second. Okay, so I now added CRUD. Let me show you what happened. It's basically have the app controller, I have the code there, I have nothing here, no code, but still, okay, I hate this feature, but still, my code works. So basically, I removed all the code that was repetitive, and it's still working. And then I can customize that code as I will. So you will only need to focus on what is important in your application and not all that boilerplate of, well, look, one specific thing, if it's not there, return an exception, et cetera, which is very, very tedious. So for creating an API, with this plugin, it's basically adding that line. And seriously, that's it. Let's do that. Creating the API. So I added this line. Let me go to app controller. This line and this line. And just by having that, I can go to tags.json. And I have a REST API that works for index, add, edit, delete, etc. So it's quite simple. The cool thing about this is not like, oh, this is so magic. It's super complex because once I need to change something, it's going to be a mess. And that's not true because basically what CRUD does is transform your application into an event-driven application. So anything that you need to change, there will be hooks to change exactly what you need. Let me see. I added the debug info to the API. I'm not sure if you saw that. Apparently, how much time do you have? 5? OK. So I'm going to hurry up a bit. Anyway, the slides are going to be available to you with the sample code that I made. So for authentication, it's also a two-step process. I tell CakePHP to hash the passwords, and I enable authentication. And now, for every action, it will ask login. The login action is also very simple. It's just, if there is anything posted to the action, identify the user, set the user to the session, and that's it. For creating permissions, this is a bit longer example. I'm not going to get into details. But basically, what I wanted to show is that you can have very complex permission systems with only a few lines. What it does is this allows index and add actions. And if the user is trying to access a bookmark that does not belong to him, it returns false, which means not allowed. And to enable that authorization handler, basically it's that line. You configure the auth component and add that class to it. And yeah, it's that easy. As I told you, there are hooks to change all the aspects that you want. So do you want to change what happens before paginate? You have an event for that. Do you want to change what happened before save? You have a hook for that. In this case, what it happens is I filter all the bookmarks so they can only be seen by their creator. And I save the bookmarks and add their creator to the database. Custom finders, I'm not going to get into details for that. I submitted another talk, but it was not accepted. You people. And basically here is the same example as Denmark, is find me all the bookmarks that are tagged with a specific tag. It basically will do an inner join through bookmark tags, an inner join with tags, and return everything that matches in this case. Awesome. And I would really like some questions from you. Thank you for being here. All the examples can be found in these 2 repositories. I will include the PDF slides so you can watch what I did. And yes, please, questions.
Thank you for the talk. About the ORM, how does it handle master-slave replication, for example?
Translate.
No, master-slave replication.
Okay, well, I've always been a tough guy on that, so I voted that feature multiple times down. And the reason is the way other frameworks implement that is having a pool of connections, and if they detect it is a select, they go to slave. If it is a read, they go to master. That's a bad idea. Because if one of the slaves is behind master for a long time, you will be writing on master based on wrong data. So the way you do it, and I have a plugin for that, is that if you follow REST accordingly, then if you have a GET request, you do no write on that request. So you have a middleware in which what it does is, if it's GET, it connects to slave. If it's not, then connects to master, and that's it. It's quite simple. Hope that is clear.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the talk. You mentioned the new ORM in CakePHP 3. Is it a complete rework of the existent ORM? And
yeah.
Yes. And did you evaluate existent ORM? It seems weird. Now there are so many projects like this, not exactly like this. I heard the differences, but is it weird to not to reinvent something that can exist elsewhere?
The question is, if we created the ORM from scratch, and why we didn't pick another one, or better said, why did I waste 2 years of my life? Yes, it's completely from scratch. I actually voted in the beginning for using Doctrine. I was basically wrong at that moment. One is that our license was MIT, and at the time, Doctrine was LGPL, so could not use Doctrine, and it was the only option at the time, 2 years ago. So I decided, well, what do I like about SQL? And then I decided to do an ORM that is completely different to what at the time existed. Now, apparently, a lot of people had similar ideas. Ye2 contains a similar ORM to mine. It doesn't have some of the cool features, like the advanced pipelining of formatters. And the Laravel Eloquent is very similar, but it's the active record pattern, which is very limiting. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else? Yeah, one again.
You didn't talk about performance. How does Cake 3 stands in regards of performance?
Okay, how does CakePHP stand in performance? It's around the same as Cake 2. We already did the performance checks, and it performs almost the same as Cake 2. From experience, I work at a company where we get more than 2 million requests a day, and PHP doesn't take more than 60 milliseconds to run. So I would say super fast. Okay, thank you very much for being here again. Rate the talk, please.